Hi, I'm actor Ian Champion, and welcome to History of Horror Cinema, my personal podcast tour of the good, bad, and the ugly of horror movie history. If you like what you hear, please don't forget to hit subscribe. Bela Lugosi meets a Brooklyn gorilla, 1952. By 1952, Bela Lugosi was in a declining state. He seemed in good spirits and looked deceptively healthy in Mother Riley Meets the Vampire, released that July, as I noted in my recent episode. But this masked his huge private struggle with the frailty and morphine addiction that would ultimately kill him. Although his next film, Bela Lugosi Meets a Brooklyn Gorilla, came out just 3 months later, his deterioration is startling. He looks drawn and visibly years older than the jaunty sparkle he had only that summer filming in England. In Tom Weaver's superb Poverty Row Horrors, Brooklyn Gorilla co-producer Herman Cohen testified to the sad dependency he was reduced to in his last years. He was an old man and not well, and his wife and son were on the set all the time, the wife giving him shots in the dressing room. He was there when he was supposed to be, but it was sort of like he was out of it. They brought him there, they told him what to do, he did it for the money. Looking at the title, you'd assume that this movie would at least be built around the fading star wattage he still had. But it's really a vehicle for the curious, gimmicky duo of Sammy Petrillo and Duke Mitchell. They were a twosome who specialized in a knockoff nightclub tribute act to Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. Mitchell could carry a tune, if you like crooners who sound like they're doing a mannered impersonation of a lounge singer. Their selling point, and sadly the only thing that makes this film worth watching, is Petrillo, whose impression of Jerry Lewis is uncannily good. Petrillo came from showbiz stock. His father was a Borscht Belt comic and dancer, and his mother was a photographic double for film star Alice Faye. His gift for mimicry and brazen confidence impressed Milton Berle after sneaking into one of his show rehearsals and showing him his Lewis imitation. This was Petrillo's gateway to the man himself. Jerry initially employed him in one of Martin and Lewis's phenomenally popular Colgate Comedy Hour shows as his baby son, when Petrillo was just 16. Petrillo's sidekick, Duke Mitchell, shared Dean Martin's Italian ancestry, being born Dominic Michelli, and similarly was a decade older than his partner. Sean Levy's Lewis biography, King of Comedy, records that Mitchell even had a bit part opposite Martin as Jerry's cornerman during the comic boxing sequence in Sailor Beware. He also adds the trivia gem that opposite him was a pre-fame James Dean. However, Martin and Lewis's tolerance for this sincerest form of flattery soon paled. Though Jerry had been a sponsor of sorts to Petrillo and got him signed up with powerhouse talent agency MCA, the duo's visibility around Los Angeles in venues that admittedly couldn't afford the real thing still irritated Lewis. There is a suspicion that he had used his power to block Mitchell and Petrillo from stage work, but since Petrillo was so young, he was able to break his MCA contract, pursue live bookings, and eventually parlay their low-rent tribute onto the silver screen. This came about via Poverty Row producer Jack Broder, who had already released Bride of the Gorilla with Raymond Burr and Lon Chaney Jr. the year before. As if Bela Lugosi hadn't had enough monkey business in his past film roles, such shenanigans were about to return like a bad dream. Bela Lugosi Meets a Brooklyn Gorilla was shot in May 1952 on a $50,000 budget in 9 days. This might seem remarkable, unless A. you've seen the film, and B. you realize the director is William Bodine. Fans of my podcast will recall in previous episodes I discussed his work on such celluloid stinkers as the Monogram 9 entries The Ape Man and Voodoo Man. Posthumously nicknamed One Shot, owing to his ability to shoot films in what appears to be less time than it takes to watch them, Bodine racked up over 400 directorial credits, including many TV episodes, all while in Tom Weaver's evocative description, twisting and smoothing his handlebar moustache, calling everybody Sam, and bellowing instructions to actors all the time they were in front of the camera. Internet Movie Database attempts to defend him by claiming that, contrary to his reputation, Bodine did actually do retakes when absolutely necessary. This unfortunately sounds like faint praise. Sean Levy noted that, whilst he was conceiving of a cinematic idiom in which to express the comic personalities of Mitchell and Petrillo, he directed at least 6 other films. At the point Bodine worked with this pair, they were developing something of a professional swagger. Although Jerry's own producer at Paramount, Hal Wallace, threatened to sue them over the possible perception that their second-rate act devalued the Martin and Lewis brand, he never actually pulled the trigger on this. This emboldened the counterfeit duo. Petrillo believed he was funny enough without the resemblance, and Duke Mitchell told reporters, "I should be suing Dean Martin because he went out and got a nose job to look like me." So, with an erratic star, a hack director, and a lead pairing of dodgy provenance, what does Bela Lugosi Meets a Brooklyn Gorilla have to show for it? The answer is not much. The entire first act is a showcase for Mitchell and Petrillo, who fall out of the back of a plane en route to entertaining US troops in Guam and land unconscious in the jungle on the island of Kola Kola. They are looked after by tribal chief Rakos, Al Kikume, and his daughter Nona, the lovely Charlita. While Duke puts the smooth moves on Nona, including singing the highly fast-forwardable ditty Deed I Do, Sammy tries to avoid the tender, abundant mercies of Saloma, Muriel Landers. If Nona looks somehow familiar clad in her native dress, sandwiched between the boys' antics, I think it's evidence of some more intentional double-act copying going on. She bears a hoped-for resemblance to Dorothy Lamour, who, clad in a sarong for many of her film roles, gave Bing Crosby and Bob Hope sex appeal in their classic Road to comedies. Here the filmmakers can only wish for such luster and quality. You'll also spot that the natives' tribal dancing has that very particular showbiz choreography that is less Pacific Islands and more Saturday Night at the Copa. Though without giving away any spoilers, there is a reason this time. Eventually, after more than enough underpowered chemistry and Petrillo's forced gags and machine gun laugh outstaying his welcome at least on my island, Nona offers to take the terrible twosome to meet her employer at his castle. A castle in a jungle? I know what you're thinking, but apparently there are actually several in the world, including in Australia, Iran, and Cuba. This may be the only educational value this movie has, unless you count audiences who left the cinema saying, "Well, that taught me a lesson." Nona's scientist boss, Dr. Zabor, may be able to help Duke and Sammy return home. Leaving aside the ethnic clue, a medical man whose surname begins with a Z narrows down the possibilities of who might be inhabiting the white coat. And there he is. Poor Bela. He tries to be a good host, and for his pains is hammered by Sammy's in-jokes about his resemblance to his most famous alter ego. "Ain't this the fellow that goes around with the hand on the face, biting people on the neck and wearing capes?" There are whole indigestible chunks of the remaining 2 acts where Lugosi is given hardly anything to do. At one point, while Sammy and Duke go back and forth dealing with the admittedly cute chimpanzee Ramona, he sits disconsolately with a glass of wine in the hall, chipping in the odd line to them as they pass, as though his dressing room is on fire. Bodine and the writers, would you believe there are 3 of them, eventually can't resist raiding cobwebbed old plot vaults to go ape with man in a gorilla suit monkey shines still being passed off well past their 1940s sell-by date in horror movies. For Lugosi, his career was bedeviled by anthropoid action, either playing them in The Ape Man and Island of Lost Souls, or being murdered by them, from Murders in the Rue Morgue, where he's killed by his own criminal gorilla, through Return of the Ape Man, and the shuffling Neanderthal henchman who offs him in Dark Eyes of London, all of which I've covered in past episodes. No wonder he seems so irritated, even in this paradise setting. Innocent chimp Ramona is injected with a serum that temporarily accelerates her evolution to a tailed monkey. We pity her in more ways than one. Being cuddled in her cage by Sammy's relentless, cackling gagmeister, it must be awful for her, having to work with such primitive specimens. Zabor, mad with jealousy that Nona prefers Duke to his perverse charms, injects Duke as well, devolving him into the type of man-gorilla that's only funny in Laurel and Hardy comedies. When Zabor and his assistant come to kill Nona's now simian sweetheart, Sammy takes a bullet for him, and as Duke tries to revive him, we discover it was all Sammy's dream. The boys are in their dressing room back home, about to go on at the Jungle Hut in New Jersey, and the characters we've just met are now Americanized versions of their Islander selves. At least there's a happy ending for Lugosi this time. As the club manager, he survives to threaten the leads with nothing more deadly than unemployment. When Bela Lugosi meets a Brooklyn gorilla was being readied for release, Jerry Lewis was no longer feeling charitable about Mitchell and Petrillo's potential infringement being extended into the movie world. He told poisonous gossip columnist Luella Parsons, "You can't create something and have people swipe it right out from under your nose without doing something about it." Hal Wallace ordered Broder to show him an advanced screening, but he soon had to back down from strong-arm threats. The public perception that really would carry weight was the potential backlash, portraying Martin and Lewis as wealthy bullies trying to stamp out little guys who were just making a harmless living. They wisely decided to drop any threat of action. Combing through the index of Jerry's autobiography, Dean and Me, Sammy Petrillo is unsurprisingly not mentioned. Still, he and Duke Mitchell, for better or worse, at least had lead roles in a Hollywood movie as a memento. Thanks for listening. If you like what you hear, please don't forget to hit subscribe.